actually admit that the United States is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military in a way the world has never seen before. Never before has a modern, capable military, which Iran used to have, been so quickly destroyed and made combat ineffective, devastated. We said it would not be a fair fight, and it has not been. As I stated during our first press conference on day 2, that was 10 short days ago, the combination of the world's two most powerful air forces is unprecedented and unbeatable. Between our Air Force and that of the Israelis, over 15,000 enemy targets have been struck. That's well over 1,000 a day. No other combination of countries in the world can do that. So today, as we speak, we fly over the top of Iran and Tehran. Fighters and bombers all day, picking targets as they choose. As our intelligence gets better and better and more refined. Looking up, the IRGC and Iranian regime sees only two things on the side of aircraft: the stars and stripes and the Star of David. The evil regime's worst nightmare. Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no air force. Iran has no navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky. Their missile volume is down 90%. Their one-way attack drones yesterday, down 95%. And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with, we have been dealing with it, and don't need to worry about it. We're on plan to defeat, destroy, disable all of their meaningful military capabilities at a pace the world has never seen before.
Donald Trump is the right man at the right time. To our allies, if you can't join this fight, what fight are you going to join? To Spain. You won't let us use your our air bases in your country to stop a homicidal regime from getting nuclear weapons that terrorize the world. I am encouraging President Donald J. Trump tonight to move all of our bases out of Spain. You know, we have an Article 5 commitment to Spain under NATO, but we shouldn't have air bases in a country that will not let us use those planes to protect the world against a religious Nazi regime. As to Lebanon, there is a military leader in charge of the Lebanese army that I don't trust as far as I can throw him. He is willfully ignoring Hezbollah. He's not disarming Hezbollah. There were rockets fired from areas that were supposed to be cleared by the Lebanese army. Let's get somebody in charge of the Lebanese military that will use it. Finally, to my friends in Saudi Arabia, I've been your biggest champion. I think the Crown Prince has taken Saudi Arabia in a completely different direction in a good way. But here's what I want to say to Saudi Arabia tonight. I'm willing to do a mutual defense agreement with your country to give you protection in perpetuity. Under the agreement I've been pushing, and I hope we can continue to talk about, if you're attacked by Iran, we would go to war for you.
As we often do here at the Department of War, with the bottom line up front, for the world to hear and the press to actually admit that the United States is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military in a way the world has never seen before. Never before has a modern, capable military, which Iran used to have, been so quickly destroyed and made combat ineffective, devastated. We said it would not be a fair fight, and it has not been. As I stated during our first press conference on day 2, that was 10 short days ago, the combination of the world's two most powerful air forces is unprecedented and unbeatable. Between our Air Force and that of the Israelis, over 15,000 enemy targets have been struck. That's well over 1,000 a day. No other combination of countries in the world can do that. So today, as we speak, we fly over the top of Iran and Tehran. Fighters and bombers all day, picking targets as they choose. As our intelligence gets better and better and more refined. Looking up, the IRGC and Iranian regime sees only two things on the side of aircraft: the stars and stripes and the Star of David. The evil regime's worst nightmare. Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no air force. Iran has no navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky. Their missile volume is down 90%. Their one-way attack drones yesterday, down 95%.
Well, everybody, today is Saturday, March 14th, 2026, and this is going to be a fantastic live stream show. I want to welcome you all to a very important live stream as the situation in Iran continues to develop. It is obviously the number one trending story in geopolitics, and the United States has now entered into its third week of war with Iran. And to help us break it down today, I've brought two special guests for today's episode. Now, many of you know Alex from Reporterify Media. He so frequently joins the show. And Alex, I want to add you to the program here tonight. How are you today, sir?
Well, thank you very much for having me on this important evening here. It's Saturday, 9 p.m. here in China, and we have a lot to unpack here and a great panel tonight. Thanks, Cyrus.
Absolutely. And also making his debut on our show, everybody, this is Christopher from DD Geopolitics. Christopher, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Greetings from Moscow.
All right, fantastic. So we have an excellent panel now. Everybody, we have linked up multiple channels to tonight's live stream. So if you check the video description, if you're watching on my channel, we've got links to the other two channels that have linked up here. Christopher, it's so nice to finally connect with you. I mean, I've actually I think we followed each other on Twitter for many years now. You obviously do a lot of great insights into geopolitics around the world. So just very excited to have you in tonight's show this evening.
It's a pleasure to be with you. It's a real pleasure. I look forward to our ongoing collaboration and friendship. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, Christopher has a great background. His father is from Iran. He brings in a very good perspective that I think all of our guests are really going to enjoy. Obviously, Alex has a very big finance background, usually gives us the great insights into the markets and what's going on. I know many of our viewers out there are concerned. I mean, we've seen oil prices going through the roof. We've seen gasoline prices here in the United States has increased, probably, anywhere from 60 to 80 cents in the past 7 days alone. A lot of people here, the vibe in America right now, gentlemen, is that a lot of Americans feel that they have been cheated. A lot of Americans feel that the Trump administration does not represent certainly what they voted for, but certainly not putting America's interests at heart. And I think a big thing that we saw, and the reason why we have that intro clip, is we're really looking at the messaging that's coming from the White House. And it seems to be that it's very different from what's actually happening on the ground. So I'd like to first turn to Christopher. I'd like to get your initial thoughts on, you're new to the channel, so I'd like to give us a little bit of an overview of your thoughts on what's going on in the war so far as we're entering into this third week.
Well, once again, the United States has violated all diplomatic protocols, international norms, and standards by attacking Iran or helping to facilitate an attack on Iran in the midst of negotiations. It wasn't bad enough that Iran unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that President Obama had worked on, and President Trump, in his first time in office, during his first administration, he got rid of it. He said, "Okay, rip it up. It was a bad deal." And since that time, we've had not one, but this is the second war on Iran. Not to mention the hybrid war, the economic war, the sanctions, all of the brutal pain that the Iranian people have faced at the hands of the US. But this war is unique in that the previous war last year was 12 days, and Trump came out at the end of it and said they had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Fast forward nearly less than a year later, and now we have to go to war again against Iran because they still have a nuclear program. So people are very angry. People are upset. People are frustrated. Why we have gotten ourselves into another war. And this war is different. Iran last year used strategic patience and escalated only proportionally to what it saw as the threats that were coming. It didn't extend and expand the war to regional countries and to US assets in those countries. And now this time around, it has done everything it said it would do if the US attacked. And we see now the Gulf states are on fire for hosting the US military, US logistics, US institutions and structures. We see that the war has expanded to Lebanon, and you see now that the Lebanese state is virtually near collapse. We've seen that Yemen is prepared to escalate and to close the Bab al-Mandeb and to close off the Red Sea. We've seen escalation in Iraq with the Popular Mobilization Forces and other aligned militias to Iran that were fighting Daesh, that were fighting ISIS alongside me and many others who were part of the Iraqi military. Now they are in a full fight. We see sectarianism and the prospects of balkanization in Iran. We see a very fragmented Iranian so-called opposition. One side picking the son of the former Shah, Reza Pahlavi, who lives in the US. The other side picking Maryam Rajavi and the Mujahideen Khalq, the People's Mujahideen of Iran, who are based in Albania, who are supported by people like John Bolton, Pompeo, Rudy Giuliani, and others. So we have a complete chaotic situation. They've opened up Pandora's box. They don't know how to close it now. They've unleashed forces that control. And now Iran says, we're going to decide when this is over. And so the US now is bearing the brunt of having unleashed this with no clear objectives now, no clear timeline, and no understanding of what kind of commitment we're experiencing here. There are talks of boots on the ground. What kind of boots on the ground? Iran is not Afghanistan and is not Iraq. It's much larger, it's much deeper, it's a civilization state, and it has a far greater resources and capabilities. We're seeing that live in front of us right now. So my perspective is that Americans, at least the ones that I know, are deeply frustrated. We've seen the fracturing of the MAGA movement. People saying that this is not America first, this is Israel first. That comes in the midst of the Epstein files release. People are very frustrated. Gas prices are going up. Cost of living is going up. People are still saddled with debt. There is still no solution to many of the problems that we face. And there are a lot of problems: migration, internal economy, student loan debt, housing debt, the ability to afford a house, affordability, general social issues, crime, poverty, you name it. And still we haven't solved those problems. And now we are on another crusade in the Middle East. People didn't vote for this, ultimately. People looked to Trump, as they did to Tulsi and many others, who said, we're not going to get into forever wars, no more endless wars, no more regime change wars. And now we're smack in the middle of having killed not only the political leader of Iran, but the religious authority for tens, if not hundreds of millions of Shia Muslims in the world. So you're seeing the fire spread far beyond the borders of Iran. And I think that this was a tremendous miscalculation. I think that Trump and his administration, the people around him, were sold a myth by those who were pushing this war from the beginning, both the Israelis and the neocons, the hawks on Iran, who were saying, once you get rid of the supreme leader and the political and military establishment, it's going to be easy. It's going to be like Venezuela. You're going to go in there, you're going to be a hero. They're going to greet you with roses and flowers on the streets. Not going to happen. And we knew this from the beginning, but they were sold a myth. Now they have to deal with that reality. And we are all facing down a tremendous, unstable and volatile world political situation, economic situation. And I'm deeply concerned for the coming weeks and what the administration eventually decides to do. I think they're looking for an off-ramp, but they're going to lose face, as the Chinese say. They're going to lose a lot of face because in this sense, they have not defeated Iran. In fact, they've made Iran more strong. They've consolidated any sort of internal dissent and a rally around the flag effect that has strengthened the Iranian state. And I cannot foresee any sort of regime change or transformation in Iran, at least for the next decade or so.
Yeah. Yeah, Christopher, that's an incredible insight. And I think you've really brought our viewers some just a great knowledge of the history and exactly what has happened over these last few weeks and years. And that's the interesting thing. I'm going to touch on a couple of things that you said, and then we're going to get to Alex here. But, the funny thing is we've seen, this inconsistency from the Trump administration. As you mentioned, last June, Donald Trump and the White House came out and said, look, we have obliterated the Iranian nuclear capabilities. Everything there has been obliterated. And you can go to the White House right now. You can check on the website. It literally says, and anything else is fake news, because this is what we've done. And over the last 12 months, we've seen Donald Trump, simply just go around the country, talk about how great he is, talk about how amazing the U.S. military is. And then all of a sudden, in that intro, we played that clip from, Lindsey Graham. And it's incredible as you see these U.S. politicians that just this randomly throw out numbers. Iran was a week away from having 10 nuclear bombs. Or now it's actually 20. No, it was 30. They actually had 40 nuclear bombs. and you could just see them just pulling stuff out of their hats. They have no idea what they're talking about. At this point, they're just throwing out numbers. I guess they believe the American public doesn't know enough, or just simply believes every word that they say. I think it's very hard. Someone like Lindsey Graham, a senator from South Carolina. Many of you guys might not know the story, but actually there was like a hurricane that came through South Carolina, and he very famously just said, look, I am not concerned with what's going on in South Carolina. We've got to go defend Israel. Like, Israel's in a war right now. That's my number one concern. I cannot be worrying about some hurricane in South Carolina when Israel is, affected right now. And, to me, I just don't understand how you can serve in U.S. political office when your job is literally to represent the voice of people from South Carolina. Yes, you can have allies and you can support each other around the world, but obviously your number one job is to take care of the people that you'd represent. And I think, Christopher, you've hit on a lot of great topics there as far as the frustration here in the United States. It is real. I know you guys aren't here in America, so I'm going to bring that perspective. The frustration is real. The divide that's happening. I think the most interesting thing over the last week on Twitter is the amount of MAGA influencers that have now actually started to turn. And I think that the entire MAGA movement is literally crumbling and is absolutely disintegrating, because you've got some of the biggest voices that are just saying exactly what you said. Wait a second. I thought last year we obliterated Iran nuclear capability, but now we need to go to war. Wait a second. Now you're talking boots on the ground. Sorry, I didn't sign up for this. And that's like, oh wait, you're not loyal to Trump anymore. And now they're getting questioned. Trump, the internal fighting is happening. People are burning MAGA hats. It is absolute chaos right now in America. But that you've hit on so many things. That is the one thing that Americans don't want. They don't want a forever war. This is not what we voted for. But I want to bring in Alex. Alex, you've been very patient. I know you've been waiting there, my friend. Everyone, we always enjoy hearing from Alex. And Alex, I want you to kind of bring in a perspective from the markets, because you are a market guy. You are a finance expert. And I really want you to understand, I want you to let us know a little bit about the oil and talking about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. About a week ago, Alex and I were on another show. We talked about this. We predicted exactly what was going to happen. Things have been unfolding. Alex, give us the latest updates.
Well, thank you for having me on. The Ambassador of Peace, Cyrus Jansen, and congratulations on approaching 1 million subscribers and followers. And Chris, it's great to see you again. I think the last time we saw each other in person was when we were on quite an adventure down to Donbass area and spent about 10 days down there. And as I say, geopolitics does play a big part here in the financial markets. It's really interesting, and funny how the markets know before actually the missiles fly. I'm going to bring you guys back to March the 6th, right before this, I would say, surprise escalation. The oil derivative market hit 8 million contracts in a single day. And the call options for Brent crude, which is a little bit some of the most expensive oil, it basically was breaking records. And the shorting chaos on the market is not coincidental shorting. I'll give you an example here. As Mr. Hexes said, people are going to get used to seeing the American flag and the Star of David from the skies. I'm going to tell you right now, you're Americans, if you're investing in the financial markets right now, look out. Now, we all remember 2023, a study from the New York University, shorting of Israel's ETF spiked 2,000 points from 2,000 to 227,000 shares the day before October 7th. So now we're seeing a very, very similar pattern in the markets here. We're seeing the markets be manipulated. And in the derivatives and option markets, the shareholders on the stock market, they see it secondhand, okay? You're kind of like, we're seeing the blockbuster opening weekend, and you'll see it about 2 weeks later. And what happens is you can see what's playing out in the market. Now, let's talk about oil here for a moment. And we've seen oil, and we predicted this if you saw us on the Duran, a recent show, and recently on one of our last live streams that we talked with Cyrus. Yes, there was an immediate spike to $120 a barrel, just like that, within a heartbeat. It was one of the biggest increases ever in oil. And then we saw a retreat in the price. But that was due to President Trump getting out there. Also, some of the energy ministers of the United States stating that, don't worry, we'll get cargo and containers, the VLCCs, to go through, the Strait of Hormuz. No problem, business as usual. And same with Pete at the end of his little pep rally that he had. So What I'm already seeing on the weekend trading, there is gray markets, the weekend trading for oil. It's up another 5%. And I'm telling you, when oil starts to trade above $100 a barrel consistently, I don't care what the Trump administration says about we're making lots of money. No, you're bankrupting lots of businesses, and it is coming to a business near you. Everything is going to go up. It's not just at the pump. It's everything that you buy, every light that you turn on, every time that you touch something, order something, do anything with your business, you are financing this regime in America. It's incredible.
Yeah, Alex, we love to get your insights into the markets, because this is why we follow geopolitics, because like you said, the derivatives and option traders are moving ahead, and it's also interesting. I think with the Trump administration, I believe that there's heavy insider trading going on within that organization as well. Massive organization, because you see. You actually see this very interesting, Alex, you and I have talked about the tariff war, and it's been an interesting one over the last year, because, you have these on again, off again tariffs, and it almost becomes to the point of a market manipulation when you say, okay, you know what, we're going to pass 100% tariffs on China. Market goes down. Then the next day it's like, okay, you know what, we're going to pause it for 90 days. Boom, market recovers. And it just, you've had numerous events of that over the last, 12 months. And no different in this war. So
right.
Again, you have to take that into consideration. But I think that I like what you said there. Go ahead.
Let me add to that before this, I lose it in my mind here. Yes, the off again, on again tariffs is one thing, but they have found that the Americans have taken about $168 billion in their treasury in tariffs. They've been ordered to give it back by the courts. The Customs and Immigration in the United States says we can't honor that. Well, that's $168 billion out of American hands. When you are going to the pump this weekend and you're short a few bucks, or you can't give your kids a little bit of extra spending money for the weekend, it's this goddamn administration that's doing it to you, hammering you with tariffs. And now we just seen on Friday, they are putting 60 countries under investigation. The administration is putting 60 outside countries, of course, for they call it slave labor. Can you prove that you don't use slave labor to sell your products or whatever? And they're going after 60 countries, and we all know who they're going to go after. They're going to go after China. They're going after Vietnam. They're going after Cambodia. They're going after all Southeast Asia and all these nations that provide them quality goods. And they're doing it again. So if they can't get away from it on tariffs, they're going to get it on another law. It's just absolutely out of control. And it's really... it just grabs you by the neck when you see these headlines every day. Sorry, Cyrus, go ahead.
No, you're good. Well, guys, I want to talk about something that I think has come out recently, and there's two developments. Christopher, I want to get your insights on this, because what has now come out and what's been confirmed by U.S. media is that the United States government did not think that closing the Strait of Hormuz was going to be a response that Iran was going to be able to do. And there's an interesting clip that I had shared in a previous video. And this was actually, I'm going to play it. I've got it. This is from a different show. Let me just play this real quick for you guys.
He said there is a plan. He points to Venezuela as a template, which means to me that going in, they had some sense on the ground of what was coming next.
Yeah, that's very good clip there, because and I love the news reporter there for Fox News, Christopher, because it's like, it means to me, at least we got a plan, because what we've done is we've taken a look at Venezuela, and we're using that as our blueprint, guys. And because we were so successful there, we're going to be able to do the same thing there. Now, this is Geopolitics 101. Do not assume things. You have to make sure that you're playing. I mean, especially like you had said, Christopher, this is Iran. This is not Venezuela, right? Venezuela is a much different scenario. And I think it really speaks to the arrogance of the Trump administration. I believe it speaks to the incompetence of the Trump administration, and simply, arrogance. What does the Bible say? Pride comes before the fall, right? And all of a sudden, if you get too arrogant and you just think, I'm going to walk in, we're going to take out the supreme leader, who, as you mentioned, is not only the leader of the country, but also the religious leader, home to 90 million people, 90 plus million people in that country, 4 times the size of Iraq. Before I hand it over to you, they have closed the Strait of Hormuz. And an interesting development, gentlemen, that has happened within the last 12 hours, Iran has said that they are potentially going to allow ships to pass through if they pay in the Chinese currency. Okay. Now, all of a sudden, this has been a game changer. Now, we've talked about de-dollarization. We've talked about the Chinese yuan, and we see BRICS. We see this organization. I mean, Christopher, these are all topics that are very hard to you, are very central to what your work here. What I want you to do, I'm going to pass the mic back to you, and I want you to give us an insight into the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and kind of Iran's game plan right now.
So the closure of the Strait of Hormuz was always on the table. It was always sort of Iran's red line if the United States and Israel launched the regime change war. They were not secret. It was not a secret. They were very open and public about it. They always said, if you go to that level, if you strike again in this capacity, we will close the Strait of Hormuz. It's ours, right? So it's not rocket science to understand that this was a possibility. It was not only a possibility, it was an inevitability if the United States and Israel pursued this attack and regime change effort. So first and foremost, I want to emphasize that Venezuela is younger than the United States as a country. We were liberated by Simón Bolívar, right? Who looked to the U.S. Revolution, to the French Revolution as inspiration and guidance, liberated Venezuela. But Venezuela is unique in two respects. Number one, it's a socialist government, but it's not, for example, a religious government like in Iran. It doesn't have that fusion of politics and religion. And the second is that because it's a younger state, it's not necessarily a civilizational state. So it's in the process, but it's a combination of Afro-Caribbean peoples, Spanish people, and other, colonial descendants, and also the indigenous people. So in that way, it's a state that was formed out of a revolutionary nation-building process, but it's much younger. In Iran, Iran's borders have pretty much stayed this way for centuries, if not millennia. So Iran has a different character to it. Its revolution is younger, of course, than other revolutions. It's 47 years. But its political and religious history goes back centuries. In fact, over a millennia. So that's very different when you attack a country like that. And also, the governments are very different in their makeup. Iran has been in a siege mentality for 47 years. It has been under sanctions. It has been labeled a state sponsor of terror. It has been completely surrounded. It has fought a war with its neighbor for 8 years, Iraq, that was supported by the US and other Western countries. It suffered 1 million casualties. It had chemical weapons used against it. It experienced wars in both Afghanistan and Iraq multiple times since then. So Iran is aware, is fully aware and fully prepared for this. Now, how does this connect with the Strait of Hormuz? Iran's plan, this is the difference. Iran was not secret in its plan. We knew about it. And actually, I made a show last night about it, but I had been studying it for many years. Iran has studied Chairman Mao's guerrilla warfare, Che Guevara, studied the experience in Vietnam, in Korea, in Algeria, in Latin America, in Africa, right? Angola, Namibia, all these places that had national liberation struggles. Iran was aware of what was going on. And Iran said, we are a revolutionary government with a revolutionary army. And in the beginning of our revolution, we had an 8-year war with our neighbor. We saw the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. So what did we end up doing? We ended up creating and implementing, to take Mao and others, we implemented what's called the decentralized mosaic defense, which means we can suffer a decapitation strike and the military will still function. Why? Because local commanders are given full authority to carry out and implement national security initiatives. So even if the general dies, even if the equivalent of the Pentagon is destroyed in Tehran, doesn't matter. Local commanders in 30 plus provinces have full authority. Local militia commanders have full authority. And within them, within that structure, is a layer of succession 4 people deep. So you can kill 3 of those top officials over time, and you still have a replacement on the books. So Iran was fully prepared for this scenario. And so the Strait of Hormuz's closure, now the US is saying, okay, we're going to deploy naval assets, we're going to deploy troops. No problem. Iran is fully prepared for this because Iran has not relied on a standard navy. Given this mosaic defense, it has relied on small units, guerrilla tactics, and small boats in the Persian Gulf to carry out its initiatives. So it won't be battleship against battleship, aircraft carrier against drone carrier. No, that's not part of Iran's doctrine. It's not part of Iran's strategic military thinking. Their strategic thinking is small scale, like, for example, the Battle of Salamis. Iranians are very, very intellectual. You look at Araghchi, you look at Laraj, all these guys have PhDs. They've all studied Kant, Hegel. They've studied philosophy, political science. They've studied the classics. They understand. They understand that you don't need to have a large army, and you can never defeat the U.S. conventionally. The U.S. is the largest military in the world. They understand that. They understand it's the most technical. But what they can do is they can have time as their advantage. So they can use these cheap drones to speak about the economic. I know that Alex can definitely speak about that. These cheap Shahed drones that are shot down with $1 million or $4 million or $6 million missiles. And over time, you wear out the American war machine. Over time, you hit their supply lines, you hit their oil, you hit their telecommunications, and you slowly batter them down over time. That's how the Taliban won in Afghanistan. That's how the resistance won in Iraq. That's how the Vietnamese defeated the Americans. And that's how the Iranians will defeat the Americans, because they know they can't go head to head. They understand that. What they can do is they can close the Strait of Hormuz and using small boats slowly hit an oil tanker here and an oil tanker there. And they've already done that. And so no amount of Marines, no amount of naval support can stop this. And it will shake the markets. Alex knows 2-3 tankers get hit. People are not going to take the risk. We're talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of investment, of equipment. Nobody's going to take that risk. Everyone's going to stay in port and wait for this to pass.
Yeah. Christopher, again, I wanted to say thank you so much for these incredible insights. And this is why we want to always bring you guys the best insiders and have these chats, because you bring in the historical perspective, and this is really interesting. I'll give also a little bit. I'll add to that. Last night I had a chance to interview former CIA analyst Larry Johnson for the channel, and he had brought in some very interesting insights as well. And you guys can watch that video later. It's the last video that I've uploaded. But what's really interesting here is he said, now we're looking at boots on the ground. And again, there is an island in Iran where 90% of the oil is being exported from. And it was interesting. I was scrolling on Twitter and I saw a lot of these very pro-Americans just saying, you know what, this is going to be a really simple job. Let's just, I think about 5,000 Marines should get it done. Why don't we no problem. Let's just send in 5,000 Marines. We'll just go ahead and take over that island. We'll stick a couple of American flags on there, call it a day. And what Larry Johnson, he's just said, in traditional warfare, this is what you need to understand, okay? And if you're going to actually put boots onto the ground, you need a 3-to-1 ratio in order to have success. That's basically what's going to require. Iran has close to 1 million men in their army, with all of the forces. Now, across the United States, we have around 400,000 active soldiers. Now, if you add in the Marines, we're going to push it about 500,000. So he's like, so we're looking good. We just need to recruit another 2.5 million men and get them ready to fight in order to do this ground invasion. Now, obviously, if you go to that route and you actually were to call a draft and actually really go this route, I think it would be an absolute uproar in the United States, because we're not sending our young sons and daughters to go over there. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw that. Lindsey Graham, again, I have to pick on this guy, because this is a guy that has no wife, no children. And he said, I'm going back to South Carolina to tell my people to get ready to, have your sons and daughters go fight in Iran for the benefit of Israel. And it's like, man, you didn't even sugarcoat it. You don't even say for the benefit of America. It's like, no, you're going to go fight for Israel right now. So have your sons and daughters. And Christopher, I know you and I are both fathers. We have lots of children between us. And it's like, how could you just if you don't have a child, if you don't have the skin in the game, how are you telling others to do that? It's just remarkable how, immoral this is. It really is. And I just think what's amazing is what Larry had said, is he said, Cyrus, if the United States makes that decision to actually put troops on the ground, he said, the hardest thing is, he goes, people don't understand the logistics of that. How are you going to get them there? He goes, actually, to get to point A, where do you start the mission? He goes, where do you come in from? He's like, probably the closest place that we could stage troops would be in Turkey if they were to cooperate. Okay, so now they're in Turkey. It's a long way from Iran. How do we get them actually down to that island? What are we going to do? Are we going to drive in land vehicles? Yeah. Are you kidding me? He's like, think about the logistics of this, right? You're going to bring in 5,000 men. Okay. They need to have machinery. They need to have, we got to move their machinery. So we're going to need to have the large vehicles to move that. We need to have gas for those 5,000 men. Think about the food, the water, the logistics, all of the things that takes. You know, it's almost like you're playing this video game. It's like, yeah, we're just going to come in and drop 5,000 men on this island and take it over. Think about the logistics of even getting to that island. And like you said, and what Larry had said, he was a great insight, guys, is he said, you can't have 5,000 men together as well because it's a sitting target, right? And he goes, and what's happening now is is exactly like you said, and we've seen this between the war in Russia and Ukraine, is that the Russians have been very strategic in how they've been fighting this war, is that they don't cluster together. Everything is spread out very, very wide because, you know, you're not going to gather 5,000 men together on the battlefield. Things have changed. In 2026, you've got, different kind of missiles. You've got drones in play. And I think if you were to have 5,000 men in one place at one time, it is the easiest target in the world for the enemy to, for the other person to hit. And so again, it's amazing, Alex, you did a great job putting that clip together in the intro there, gathering those clips, because I think what's interesting here is we see this projection from the United States government of, guys, we're winning, everything's going amazing. But what Christopher had said earlier is the United States is desperately looking for an off-ramp right now, but they don't have it. And the one thing that everybody has to understand is that Iran has a say in this. This is not Donald Trump saying, okay, guys, guess what? We've won the war. We're now pulling out. Everything's good. The war's over. No. Iran has a play here, and they will get to determine when the war is over. Like you said, Christopher, they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. That has been on the table since day one. I guess the United States made a mistake because we just thought they never were able to do it. We just thought that was going to be a bluff, but sure enough, they've done that. Alex, what happens if this continues for a month? What if the Strait of Hormuz is closed for another 30 days? What are we going to see in the markets? What are we going to see, in the future?
Well, let's be clear. It is closed, and it has been closed since day one, and it will continue to be closed for an infinite amount of time. Now, again, when the American government is saying we have decimated Iran, we have completely cut them off, their missile capability is no longer effective, then what are you still doing there? What are you still flying over, bombing every day if you have decimated everything? You see, as Christopher, and thank you very much, Christopher, for coming onto the program. It was such an honor to tell Cyrus that we could get you on here tonight and to really give your expertise in this area. But to follow that, if we continue this for 10 more days, just 10 more days, the inflation that is going to hit the shores of the United States is unbelievable. As I have a saying, what I was saying in another program here, the missiles are loud, but it's the sound of the US dollar dropping the most that scares the hell out of Washington. This is a very different war. This is a very different time. This isn't Desert Storm. This isn't Iraq Part 2. We are looking at a very interesting playbook here. Now, the Iranians are fearless. They know that, okay, what is America's number one tool that they always use against nations? They cut them off the dollar, or they cut them off the SWIFT banking system. Well, Russia has taught us that we can't survive without the SWIFT banking system. We can survive without Visa, MasterCard, American Express. We can survive without 20,000 sanctions. And the Iranians that haven't even been part of the banking system, the central banking system of Iran, hasn't been part of that for years. Who's it going to impact the most? It's going to impact the other GCC countries. Because where do you think the Iranians have been selling their oil? Okay, 90% of the stuff flowing through the Strait of Hormuz is going to China. Well, what banking institutions do that? Follow the money. What countries is it being, let's say, washed through? Just look at Dubai. Look at how many offshore companies are formed there. They know that the ultimate beneficial owners are probably Iranians that are selling this oil. They can't cut that off. They know they can't cut that off. Why do you think none of these nations are firing back? And it's really comical. Spain told America to go to hell, and Lindsey Graham wants to strip their airports out of there, their military airports. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, Cyrus, how much of an impact is this going to have? How fast is it going to happen? It's already happened to the market. It will continue to happen to the market. I see, if this continues another 10 days to maybe 2 weeks, I say you could rip another 20 to 30% off the S&P in a heartbeat. And people might say, whoa, that's a little bit aggressive, don't you think, Alex? Well, look at Mr. Trump, what he did with his temper tantrum on the tariffs, which ripped 42% off the S&P. But he cheerleaded it back up. This is going to be a very difficult hill to climb when you're in so deep up to your neck here, where you've lost a very important shipping corridor to bring all that oil. And remember, Cyrus, and remember, Chris, when these countries sell that oil, they sell it in the good old petrodollar, and there's a promise. And that promise is, boys and girls of the Middle East, put your money back into our financial markets, please, with all that cash. Don't leave it on the sidelines. We need it in our financial markets. Just look who is underpinning and investing in all of these AI companies. Just look at, you can see them. They're all in the, I guess it would be, what's the easiest form? The 15C211 is a security exchange form. You could see who the beneficiaries are of, financial investments, private placements and stuff like that. So it would take a while to dig, but as you dig deep, you're probably going to see billions of dollars coming from the Middle East for that AI expansion going on in the United States. You tear that out of the market, the Magnificent Seven stocks are going to get hammered as well. So there's going to be oil spilling all over the financial markets here in the next couple of weeks.
Cyrus, if I could add quickly,
Please.
So we have reports now that Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and other GCC countries are reviewing their financial interests with the US. They're looking at their transactions, their investments, and things like that. Number two, Iran is very aware. Of course, Iran is able to bypass sanctions through GCC countries. Absolutely. There are hundreds of thousands of Iranians who live in the UAE, right? And who do business back and forth. But think of it this way. They know that by putting pressure on the GCC, and think about it, I'm gold on Emirates, right? Because I travel all the time. Emirates sent me an email saying we're down with flights. We can't really travel as effectively as before. Qatar Airways, the same. A lot of airlines are taking the hit. Tourism is taking the hit. Business is taking the hit. And you know who has business relationships with the GCC countries? Kushner and Witkoff in the game. So Iran knows they keep the pressure up, and people with investments in the GCC start losing money. And I don't think the GCC countries want to go to war with Iran because they're monarchies, right? Let's not sugarcoat it. They are monarchical states. Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, Oman, and Saudi Arabia are all monarchies. These monarchies are also not necessarily as strong as you might think. They also have internal contradictions, some more than others. Saudi Arabia has a large Shia population that they've repressed for many years. So I think Iran is taking this and understanding the calculus. If we apply enough pressure with enough cheap drones and enough damage over in the economy over a long period of time, the GCC countries will either try to convince the US to stop this, or might declare that they just want the US out and declare neutrality. They can't handle it anymore to host the US as a military force. And in both cases, Iran is victorious. So Iran is waiting for the situation. There could be the possibility that the GCC fights, which the UAE has threatened, some officials and influencers have threatened, but I do not see that at this point, that they're going to take active role in combating Iran. I can't see it at this point. But certainly this economic pressure that Alex is mentioning also has an impact in the negotiations and the diplomacy behind the scenes, because they want business as usual. They're losing billions of dollars a day. And these monarchies and these countries only exist because they're a financial clearinghouse. Otherwise, they're just barren deserts,
Well said, financial clearinghouse. Formula One, do you think there's going to be a race there, Cyrus, with drones flying over in Bahrain?
Definitely not. That's done. I mean, I have a lot of contacts that actually live in Dubai, and the kind of the sentiment right now in Dubai is that expats are leaving in groves. Everyone is leaving the area. A lot of property prices are down 20% already. Forecasts are to be down by 60% at the end of the year. Many people say, look, Dubai is done. I don't see how this recovers from this, because that is the issue when you have a city like Dubai that has prided itself on being the number one thing, safety, right? Safety is always going to be that. It's always been the beacon of safety in a region in a relatively unstable region. And I think that everything has been changed. And I think, Christopher, you brought in a great perspective there as far as what the other countries in the region are doing, Iran's gameplay in here. And, this is, I really fear for the United States because unlike the tariff was a self-inflicted gun wound, right? Trump passed tariffs over the entire world. Markets reacted, everybody, the stock market crashed, but it's a very simple fix. My bad. Sorry, guys. You know what? We're just going to reverse that. So just forget about the tariffs. Let's do trade again. And I made a mistake. Great. Market rebounds. Perfect. You're good to go. So it's almost like trying to compare Venezuela with Iran again, right? And this is exactly what the United States government did wrong in the first place, right? Played you that news clip. This is what the intel was going in. We thought Venezuela and Iran were the same. Okay, that's your first big strategic mistake. All right, second mistake. Okay, all right. Even if we're at a war with Iran, they don't have any capability to, close the Strait of Hormuz. They're not going to be able to do that. We don't need to worry about that risk. And, this is why, Christopher brought in a great perspective, because the American side, they're thinking, well, yeah, we have these huge aircraft carriers. Our naval is more superior. But this is where, again, you go into the logistics, right? You've got a, $50,000, advanced drone, but it's taken a $4 million missile from the United States to take it out. All right. Well, how's that? That math is not going to math for a very long time, right? The United States is going to, definitely going to be suffering some huge losses as far as munitions. We've actually seen reports of this. Financial Times came out and said in the first week of the war, the United States has cleared a tremendous amount of munitions. We've actually have a situation right now, gentlemen, where the United States is actually asking Ukraine for help and actually is getting, can we borrow some of your missile interceptors? We need them down here. There's another interesting development that happened a couple of days ago where the United States had some radar technology that was actually based in South Korea. They have now actually, removed that. And they said, we can't, the THAAD system, right? Yep. We cannot have this THAAD system in, Asia. We need to actually relocate this to the Middle East. And so you've seen, if the THAAD system is being replaced because obviously Iran had took out the other one, this is not going well for the United States. As much as Hegseth and Trump want to project this amazing power and this amazing, control of the situation, I think that Iran has a very good strategy here in order to survive. And this is what Colonel Douglas McGregor, CIA analyst Larry Johnson, that were both on my channel in the last week, they said, look, Iran has to survive. That is the biggest thing that they need to do. If they can survive, and Christopher, as you mentioned, you have the generals, going through the four different lines of succession here. What do you think is going to happen, Christopher, in the future as far as what are the terms that Iran is going to demand right now in order? Because like I said earlier, this war will not end with Donald Trump simply pulling out and saying, we won. That, he might try to spin that, but that's not going to end this. What is it going to take to actually see this war end in the future? And what does Iran want to get out of this? They now have a seat at the table and they have some negotiating pull. What do you see there?
So there are two things that have already been made clear by the Iranian government and by Iranian government officials. The first is compensation, restitution, right? Reparations, you could say. They want compensation for all of the destruction done. It was not only the killing of our civilians, including 170 plus schoolgirls and staff at that school in Minab, but also it was the destruction of cultural heritage. We've had hits at the Golistan Palace, at other Safavid era palaces, at mosques that are far older, double, triple the age of the US as a state. So Iran is saying, we want compensation for this. You unleashed it, you broke it, you pay, right? The second is Iran is demanding the US withdrawal from the Gulf. They want the US forces to no longer be stationed in the Gulf. This is not, by the way, an unusual demand. This was a demand that is decades in the making, and many groups have made this demand. Al-Qaeda made this demand, other resistance on both the Sunni side, the Shia side, all sides. Communists and Marxists have said it. Everybody has said, we don't want the US anymore in the region, and especially in the Gulf. So Iran has also said, we don't want you in the Gulf because it was from the Gulf that you launched this against us. So in order to protect us, if you want diplomacy and you want peace, we want peace. But you cannot then have a massive troop buildup and military buildup in the region with all of your equipment and technology, and then to say, oh, absolutely, we have peace because we've trusted you now 3 times. You know the saying about fool me once, fool me twice. Now Iran has been fooled 3 times. So Iran is not going to be caught off guard next time. And already the hardliners' position, quote unquote, has been strengthened tremendously. They've said, look, to all of the people who wanted reform and look, this is the America that you're dealing with. It doesn't even honor its own word. So they are coming in with very big demands. Whether those demands will be met, I'm not so sure. But what I will say is they have these cards in their hands, and they certainly are playing a game that is more on their favor, that is more on their side. And they understand. They understand also that the pressure that they've unleashed might also force the GCC countries from within to say, we don't want American bases. It's become too costly for us. Because they might also be thinking, this could happen again. This is round 2. There could be round 3, 4, 5, especially if the government in Iran survives. Do you think that there's going to be sanctions relief? I don't think so. Do you think Iran is going to be delisted as a state sponsor of terror? I don't think so. Do you think Netanyahu is still going to come every other month to Washington to say we need to hit Iran? Absolutely, if it stands. Absolutely, the Israelis will still campaign, as they're already doing through their lobbying wing and everything, to campaign for another attack on Iran. This time we'll do it better. This time we'll be more successful. And that's the biggest issue here. But Iran certainly wants, on its side, it wants compensation, and it wants ultimately an end to the U.S. military presence in the region, which has been a destabilizing factor, not a stabilizing factor. And we have to look at the history of Southwest Asia to understand that everywhere the U.S. has gone, instability, chaos, sectarianism have followed. And we need to, and Iran understands this to be the case. And Iran clearly, in this situation, is going to put that forward as part of the resolution to this.
Yeah. No, I appreciate those insights, and you can understand this because I think we've actually seen this throughout the world. We've seen this, actually a lot of European countries now coming out saying, the United States maintains over 700 military bases across the globe. A lot of Europeans coming out and saying, we don't want the United States in our countries anymore. The island of Okinawa in Japan has, for many, many years, protested against the military base there and not wanting the United States government in that region. And let's be honest, I think all of us, it's very clear that the United States government is the largest source of instability in global geopolitics. I mean, there's no other way around this. I mean, especially if you look in 2026, the wild and erratic nature of our president, Donald Trump, who has come out and, we're going after Greenland. Okay, now we're going to go Venezuela. We look at Cuba. Cuba is now being strangled economically from the United States. And you have guys like Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump who are just simply saying, yeah, we're going to launch a revolution there next. That's on the cards. We're probably going to go after Colombia. Alex, you're Canadian. Guess what? We might be coming for you too. We're going to make it the 51st state. I mean, there's just no other way to describe it other than just complete geopolitical chaos. Christopher, you mentioned it earlier. Maybe it's a little bit with the Epstein files. Try to cover up. We've got the midterm elections coming up in November. Donald Trump right now, interesting enough, the prediction markets, which now have become a very good indicator for how things are actually coming out. Polymatter for is it Polymarket? Polymarket. Polymarket. They have now predicted. Yeah, Polymarket has now predicted a very, very high percentage chance that the Democrats actually sweep the midterm elections. Very easy to understand why. Because again, like we had mentioned, the fracturing that's happening here in the United States base. Alex, I want to go back to you, and I want to go back to just to kind of get your perspective on what you're looking at from the United States and as they're continuing this war in the Middle East and what you think for the future here. You obviously have lived in Europe for a long time, over 20 years. What do you think the Europeans are thinking about? And what are other nations really thinking about right now as we're looking at America potentially putting boots on the ground, launching another long conquest in the Middle East? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the average European is concerned about actually making enough money to keep the lights on coming up this summer and maybe going into next winter. We are talking serious problems here. When you take out natural gas refineries, completely turn them offline and see natural gas spike and double, this hits people's pocketbooks. And the average person, as we've said many times on this program, they are living paycheck to paycheck. Not only are their paychecks going to be impacted by fuel costs, but also durable goods. You close down a major shipping line in the Middle East, What does that do to food exports and food imports? This is a staggering amount of finance that has been hit. And we have to look at this from a geopolitical standpoint. We can't just say, hey, it's thousands of miles away. It's not going to affect me. This isn't my war. Okay, so the White House went to war. No big deal. Yeah, it's a hell of a big deal. And it's a huge deal to every person probably watching this program. If you wonder why your car insurance goes up, why your groceries are going up, why everything is so goddamn expensive, it's because of the mistakes of this administration. Yes, a lot of this has unwounded. In 1 year, this has happened. What's going to happen 3 years? And I don't necessarily look at Mr. Trump for all of it. I don't blame him for everything. I blame who his band of brothers are that he has behind him. I mean, we just saw last week that it took a court in the United States to stop 2 aggressive subpoenas against the sitting Fed chair of the country. Okay, not only do they want the Fed chair out, put it this way, if you're on Donald Trump's bad side, or anybody connected to him, or anybody connected to that party, as I've said many times in this program, don't sit down with Jared Kushner. He's the Undertaker. You die within 48 hours. Not worth it. Any country hearing me, don't do it. Okay, and we have to then wonder, how does this play into the Europeans? Well, you heard it from Lindsey Graham. Screw you, Spain, basically from him. We'll do whatever we can to punish you. And they will. First, they started with the, let's cut their economy off. And, they're not letting us use their bases to bomb people in Iran. Oh, they're terrible people. How dare they do that? It's going to go to France. It's going to go right across the board. And it's so unfortunate because the Europeans, they are trying to be diplomatic. But again, their voices are not being loud enough here. There needs to be one country, and I'm betting on it. I think it could be a GCC country. Chris and I spoke about it before. I think Bahrain may crumble and buckle here under pressure. And if we see that ally get on the Iranian side, that could shift, opinion with some of these other countries as well. We've got to remember and how Europe became Europe, how a lot of these countries, in the Baltic states were never really well respected in Europe. Now they are. Why? Because they understand that there is history. They know that, 27 million Soviets died in World War II. So they understand the pain. But unfortunately, they have to see that America is not a great business partner. We got to shift their eyes to China. We got to start connecting these countries that haven't supported the Belt and Road Initiative. Italy, for one, she's changed her tune. She will come cap in hand in Beijing very soon. And we saw the administration already, Cyrus, is starting to take shots at the BRI because they know damn well that if this oil starts to trade in the Chinese currency, it is game over for the petrodollar.
Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, we're coming to the end of our segment here, and I think we've had an amazing show, but I do want to just kind of close this out talking specifically about China. I think would be amazing because, all of us have spent time in China over the years. Alex, you're obviously in Chongqing right now. Christopher, what do you think about, the Chinese angle in this? I think that, China has certainly supported Iran over the years. Obviously, they're both members of the BRICS organization. There's a large strategic partnership with them. I think a lot of people were surprised that, for example, that the Chinese military didn't get involved, but that is certainly not anything out of the ordinary for China. They're not involved in wars. They certainly support countries economically, I think really kind of brokering through trade. I'd like to get your thoughts kind of on the China angle. And Alex, I like what you just said there, is that if this starts trading in Chinese yuan, if that's, that's going to absolutely have a ripple effect in the oil markets and everything. So let me know your thoughts as we close out, just talking about China here and how they fit into the global geopolitics scheme.
China is the world's second largest economy, and it will eclipse the US in just a matter of years. I think that the Chinese continue to advance in all domains. We've seen China's enormous successes and its tremendous progress, especially since 1949, but even so after reform and opening up in the 1980s. So China today, as you rightfully point out, China and Iran are strategic allies, but they don't have a defensive partnership. Neither does Iran have it with Russia. So there's no reason or rationale for a Chinese military to get involved. Iran said that they could handle their affairs. China supplies weapons. China supplies, they have defense contracts. They have this kind of capability. This is not unknown. Everybody knows this to be true. But China also helps Iran, not only economically, but politically. China is able to be a powerful force. China is, of course, a permanent member of the UN Security Council. China has a very outsized role in international affairs. And China will always speak within international law to defend Iran, to defend Russia, to defend many other countries, especially oppressed countries. They speak in defense of the Palestinians and in defense of the people in Gaza who were under this genocidal assault and war since October 7th. So I think that we have to understand that the Chinese understand the deeper element, which is wars don't help anyone. They don't help diplomacy. They don't help cooperation. They don't help development. They help nothing like that. And the Chinese are very focused. China has a revolutionary history, but China transformed itself to understand that much of that development and progress can come about through economic cooperation, through deep investments, and through political transformation that can lead to the raising up of people's standards of living, standards of care, standards of everything. All metrics rise in this sense. So they understand that the US remains a belligerent power. It remains a rogue power in that way. They see in many ways the same with Israel. They're not willing to cut off ties. We're not living in, Chairman Mao's China. They're willing to understand that, look, of course, the US is doing wrong here, and we will call them out for that. The US is still an important trading partner. We still believe, because they can both criticize the American government and still support the American people, American development, because they understand it's not only the decisions of the American people at this point. So they continue to provide all of these great opportunities. They continue, all of us, I think here, continue to promote China as an important country to invest in, to allow investment from, to develop with, to coordinate with, to learn from, to understand its experiences. China will continue to support Iran. There's no doubt about that, because China sees Iran as an important, like I said on Alex's show, China understands Iran to be the keystone in the arch of Eurasia. So if you look at Iran historically, Iran, all the Silk Road trading went through Iran. That's why Iran is as unique and diverse and beautiful and rich as it is. So China understands this, and they understand also that if Iran's government were to fall and a pro-West government were to go there, it would be part of that containment that the US has spoken about. They had the pivot to the Pacific, and now we have a great game 2.0 in Central Asia, also now connecting with Iran in the Middle East. So China understands this. They recognize this. China also has, is open to different political persuasions, different governments. China doesn't only go, for example, with communist or socialist governments. They go with governments that are monarchies, which are Islamists, which are capitalists, which are democracies, which are republics. China is open to this because they understand dialogue is essential, harmony is essential, and that there's a plethora of people even within China. So I think that's important. China will play an important role in diplomacy, in development, economically, and ultimately, I believe that China's stance, China's vision of the world, which is one that is harmonious with win-win across all domains and sectors, that's what I think the future holds. If we want a peaceful future for us and our kids and grandchildren, if we want to choose the other alternative, China well understands that that could lead to further war, and China is prepared for this as well. We saw on the 80th anniversary parade, China's capabilities are second to none, and China is prepared. China won't use them, but China is prepared if somebody comes knocking at the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that I actually saw a tweet from a senator that said China has now wanting to increase its military budget by 7%. This is a major concern. The United States government must challenge this. We must not allow China to actually increase their military budget. So I actually tweeted back to the senator. I said, it's amazing that you as a U.S. senator think that you have the jurisdiction to actually tell a sovereign independent country what they should be doing with their military budget. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has said we want to increase the budget from 1 trillion to 1.5. So that's a 50% increase. And if we look at what's happened, like I mentioned earlier, what has happened in geopolitics over the last few months, I mean, it's wild. It's wild what the United States is doing. But I like what you pointed out, Christopher, is the fact that China most definitely is using that for deterrence. And this is what we've learned in geopolitics, is that when you actually have a capable deterrent system, you don't get messed with. This is why North Korea is basically living in peace right now, because the United States won't touch it. They have a nuclear bomb, and the United States will not mess with North Korea. But the United States does like to pick on smaller countries that it thinks it can take advantage of. The best example certainly being Venezuela. Gentlemen, we've had over 6,000 people in the stream across our platforms tonight. Again, everybody, I want to say that we've got the links to everybody's channels down in the description. So I want to thank Christopher and Alex. Alex, I do want to give you the final word, my friend. I want to just thank you so much. So kind of give us your final thoughts, maybe a little preview of what you're thinking in the next couple of weeks, or whatever you'd like to close out this tonight's stream.
Well, the U.S. bomb, bankrupt, and bully strategy is not going to work. I think the Saudi royal family, that's worth about $1.5 trillion, has the most to lose here in the next few weeks. If Iran continues to keep it closed, and as they say, not a barrel, not even a liter of oil is going to be flowing through there, we're going to see it on the markets. I'm concerned about the financial markets, and that's why you guys should tune in next week. Next time you guys get a notification about us, we will always do our best to cover everything geopolitical. Remember, these three gentlemen that share these screens here have connections to people around the world. We've proven it over the years, and we will continue to do that. So just to give you guys some comfort, we will be here. I'll definitely be back here with Cyrus as soon as we have the next live stream. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But again, if anyone is ever concerned about things, what you guys can do is just leave comments in our videos. We have a great support group here. As we said tonight, over 6,000 people, and probably hundreds of thousands will be watching this video after. Take it easy. It's going to be a rough ride in the next few weeks, but there are some solutions to this, and we'll share those over the next few shows. Thanks again, Cyrus. And Chris, what an honor to have you on here. Thanks again.
A real pleasure. Thank you both, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So for Christopher and Alex, I'm Cyrus. Everyone, thank you so much for your amazing support. Like Alex said, we're going to continue to be doing these live streams, and just a more kind of a preview of what we're doing in the future. Alex and I have been working on a more dedicated show. It's going to be called Let's Talk Geopolitics. You kind of saw the intro there, some new graphics there that started. If you've been watching from the beginning, you're starting to see a little bit better show production here. We're kind of building a studio right now. We got a lot of things in the pipeline, to really take it to the next level in 2026. But Christopher, what a pleasure to connect with you. Really enjoyed hearing the Iranian perspective and just that insight to the history, because unfortunately for most Americans, they don't know the history of a lot of countries. And again, this is how you make poor geopolitical decisions, which is exactly what we've seen from the Trump administration. Yes. So, gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for your amazing support. Over 6,000 people in the stream. We thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon. Thank you, gentlemen. Everyone, good night.
Bye-bye.